All right, are we ready?
Yeah.
When we first came to Portland, I had this idea, we're going to be this cool, young, hip church. And I thought I knew what that meant, and then God just blew the whole thing up, and it didn't work. And so I guess the first major deconstruction was letting go of what I thought this is supposed to look like. And not knowing what that looks like is really where the mystery and the adventure and the incredible impact the church can have on a city. I really do think that within Christianity in America, particularly Protestants and evangelicals, we justify everything if somebody comes to faith. And so what we would do is do very unbiblical leadership models, as opposed to saying this, that how we do what we do is more important than what gets done. It needs to be in the dust of Jesus. That this is God's thing and we need to do it His way. And I'll tell you the truth, that way is not always popular. And it's definitely not the easiest way. And most of the time it's a path of suffering. But it is the way that leads to life.
I'm relearning how to think. It's like giving me the right to question things that I've already done. There are certain things in life that, especially in ministry, that I have baptized and made them holy and made them that this is what we do and this is how we're going to do it for the rest of time. And even though they're not effective anymore.
The church still thinks we're taking over the world when we're in steep decline and we're not having any cultural impact for the most part. So being nice to each other is just we're walking around on the Titanic giving each other back rubs saying, isn't this great? When the truth is somebody needs to lead. Mm-hmm. And I think we're in a crisis moment for the church, and being nice isn't going to help.
A friend of mine was studying in a Master's of Business program, and I was preparing for a sermon, and he said, Chris, could this phrase help you in your sermon? It's from his business book. All teaching and training without application is entertainment.
There are so many great seminary programs you can go into and try to figure out what you're supposed to do. This isn't one of them. Right. This is I'm leading and I want to be a better leader and I want to make a lasting impact. And so, yeah, we're looking for really good leaders to take this program.
I think it's human nature to come into a program like this or any academic program and you want to know how-to stuff. You want to know methodology. And so you don't expect from day one to just do a deep dive in talking about your own heart and how God is stirring in you. Connecting with people who are on the front lines, doing ministry in different contexts, that's been kind of a game changer.
When we started Imago, we were small. We didn't think we'd be a big church, and I remember we grew pretty quickly in those first few years. And I remember journaling, and I didn't want to go to church. I was just dreading coming to church. What I felt like is that I was preaching this gospel. I was talking about how amazing God is and what He could do in your life. And I was saying, get on this bus. It'll take you to the greatest place in the world. It'll change your life. It's transformational. It's beautiful. And people were getting on the bus, and they're going, you're right. This is incredible. But I wasn't on the bus. I was just clipping tickets. And it was during one of these moments where I felt guilty for planning the church. Now I'm stuck with this church. I remember thinking, how am I going to please all these people? I can't be all their friends. I can't know all of them. I'm just going to disappoint everybody. We're humans before we're leaders, right? So we have doubts and we have struggles and we have pain and we have confusion and we want to quit and all the stuff that every leader out there is thinking. But they also think if I ever talked about that, I would lose all my street cred. No one would follow me. So I'm just trying to help them be honest with themselves and their own life and what we're supposed to be about in a way that doesn't create a false self that they had to live out of for 20 years. And then their soul goes bankrupt, It could be, I lead this small group because these people make me feel like I'm important. They make me feel like I'm needed. So when I get done and they say good job, I feel like my identity needs have been met. The problem with that, and we're all susceptible to it, but the problem is, what happens when you have to give them bad news? What happens when you have to say sin is sin? What happens when you have to speak truth for Christ and they actually hate you, or they leave your group, or they don't like what you're doing? Then your whole identity gets thrown off and you're a bad person and you're a mess. There's just so many leaders that are dying out there, and they're trying to prop up something that's not working and feel like they're the failure, and we've just got a really bad set of bottom lines that leaders are spiritually trying to lead out of. So many pastors are disempowered to actually do the thing they're called to do.
It's good stuff, man. Every once in a while we go deep, and it's honestly kind of shocking for me to hear so much honesty. And he goes personal as well, which is refreshing, I think, as a young leader, to be entrusted with the gory details.
I don't know. I don't know how else to be myself.
I do think that in the Northwest, sometimes we never really had the Christian culture to lose. And I think doing ministry in that context is an important context to understand, because most of the world didn't have that context to lose. And so I do feel like this program and the lessons learned from a city like Portland is applicable just about anywhere.
I think the DMIN program has been one of the best things that has happened to me personally as a leader, but also to our church even in Uganda, as we're trying to figure out this thing. What does discipleship look like in Uganda's context today? And then also interacting with men who have thought through this stuff for a long time. That has been a great thing for me.
It's the one place a leader can go and be brutally honest with themselves, with other men and women, and really talk about the stuff that nobody else wants to talk about, you know?
Some of the questions about what is the gospel, you think you get that one, but then as you examine it deeper and deeper, you realize I only have a small part of the gospel that I've been preaching.
I remember the first church that hired me, and I've only been a Christian for 2 years, and I didn't know anything. But I remember in my youth and my arrogance and in my zeal just thinking, man, all these people in this church are dead. You know, because that was sort of the language. It's a dead church. And over the time of being there for 3 years, I learned that these people loved God, and they wanted to worship God, and they wanted to serve God. They wanted the glory of God to fill that church, but the leadership of that church really wasn't interested in those things. We were running a religious organization. And so if the Holy Spirit wanted to come in and do something, he'd have to take a number.
For me, I have joy when I get beyond the religious culture and seeing God explode those things, and seeing how God has a passion for the lost, how God is working in artists who are doing their art.
I think Rick does a wonderful job of encouraging us to risk, to try to have those convictions become real realities in our communities and with the folks that we love in the city and the folks that we love in our church communities.
He really leads by asking questions, and he really takes an interest in your specific context.
What I hope to walk away from this is, first of all, what is the Holy Spirit speaking? How is God leading me? And then secondly, how am I going to obey? Right? Just to hear what God's saying and to obey him.
So much of leadership in any organization becomes a lot of busy work, and pretty soon you're like, I haven't even thought about the main thing for the last 6 months. Here's your call back, and here's your life back, and you know, go risk and live this faithful, faith-filled life of adventure, you know. It's a process of humility, it's a process of being broken before God, and yet it's a process of still having to have the faith to get up and say, this is what God has said, let's go.